Okay, good evening, everybody. And thank you for your patience, and thanks for those who are in attendance this evening. We'll also, of course, have this recorded so that it may be re-aired, or if anybody that has questions can feel free to call in or email or ask. With that being said, we're going to call the meeting to order at 5:40 p.m. We're going to do a roll call. Trustee Steve?
Present.
Trustee Brown?
Present.
Trustee House is present. We're going to stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, and then our prayer. So if we can take just a moment. Heavenly Father, we just come again to say thank you for another day, for getting us here safe. We ask that you oversee all those who made it, our families, and those at home that are watching, and oversee the budget for the village of Dolton. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so gonna go into old business. I just have to pull my report for the finance. Okay, so and last month when we did the financials, it's about a 20-page document that we printed out and handed to everybody. I think it was a bit much for most of the residents, but but some have interest, so I do want to ask if anybody is interested in that document. Just let me know, and I'll be sure that I can send it via email, or I'll have a copy printed up. But I did not want to tie up a lot of people's time with paper and things like that if they were disinterested in having that. So that being said, please either during citizens address or afterwards, just let me know if you want to have a copy pre-printed for each one of the meetings, and I'll be glad to do so. Having said that, the financial status, as we went over last month, we talked about where we stood within the general fund as well as where we stand in our water fund, because those are the two primary funds that we want to pay attention to. Not that other funds are unimportant, but those are the ones that seem like could get us in the most trouble. So with that being said, I'm just going to look at the financials to give an overview of if we have a positive cash flow for the month. Well, for the 2 months, because it reflects it reflects May and June, which are the first 2 months of our fiscal year. And then I'm glad to have Chris here, who is our finance person, so I did not formally acknowledge you, but look at that smile. Okay, so with that being said, I'm looking at, for the months of May and June, we had an operating income loss of $28,000 for that 2-month period. Does that sound about right to you, Chris?
Sounds right.
Okay, so that's within our general fund, $28,000 for the first 2 months. We did not at this time pass a budget, so we do not have a budget to compare our budget to actuals in terms of if we're on schedule. However, we are voting on the budget come next Monday. If that budget passes, we will be able to provide budget to actuals in our next finance committee meeting. I'm going to move along to the water fund just to give an update on where we stand on that fund. Okay, and then within our water fund, okay, I think this maybe you're looking at the wrong report. Let me ask you to 1 second. Hold on, let me go to Chris here. Okay. Well, I'm going to ask you about the fund. Okay, so in our water fund, we're going to get an updated financial on that because all of the expenses were not included on that report. So that report will be updated at next month's meeting. But having said that, I want to ask any of the trustees on the board if you had a chance to review or any questions on the monthly financial reports.
No questions right now.
Okay, and then for the residents, at the last meeting, I had some residents that told me that they were unable to hear questions as they were being brought out. So if we can, during citizens address, please feel free to notate the questions, bring them up during citizens address, and we'll be sure to respond. The next thing that we wanted to go, and these are the things that we just want to keep a track of on a monthly basis. I'll ask for two things. I know, Chris, you already responded via email, but if I could just get your verbal response to the status of the bond payments and our water payment, then that way it'll save me from reading to everybody.
City of Chicago. City of Chicago is City of Chicago. Their payment is on schedule to make it. That funds has been fully funded, in part with real estate taxes and in part with collections exceeding expenses for the water fund. That service for all the 2004 and 2009 bonds, there was some real estate taxes that were collected for that. I think we're at, I don't remember what percentage we are funded for those items.
So I guess the $1 million question is, we're on track for the bond payment as it stands right now.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, questions from the board?
None.
Okay, hearing none, we're going to go to item D, which is the uncollected water bills. I did have a report. I'm going to share this with the board. I got that one this morning. I'll make a copy for those available at this time. And I know last month we had what we believe to be an anomaly within District 3, which had higher balances, but it looks like we're still at 5.6 million in uncollected water bills. Can you kind of?
We are, those require assistance from Locust because to make sure that everything is properly reported. So to make sure everything is properly reported for the subsequent reports that the village has to file, we have to make sure those adjustments are done both on the actual bill, but also on the consumption. And until that part of the consumption is corrected, we can't just adjust it. Otherwise, then we have to come backwards and try to adjust it because the consumption has to be accurate for the reports that they file with, I think I don't know the title of the report, but that report also is influenced by consumption, so that report is correct. We're waiting on it all to be corrected at once before we can fix it on the reports that you receive.
Do they have like a projected time frame? Because I think the big thing, at least from the board perspective of mine, would be we want to know where we're standing and if we're improving. Because I know the water department is a big point of emphasis for the administration, and we want to gauge what things are working well and what things may not.
I can check. I don't. No one's told me a timetable, but I can follow up and let you know next week or early at the end of the week.
Okay. If you're able to email the board, we would appreciate it.
No. Since you said, we just need to know where we stand, and we'll be able to do that at the end of the week. If we're collecting, are we collecting more, or are we still, not collecting as much as we should have?
Okay, so with that being said, we're gonna go into the budget.
Status of. Did you update us on the status of the Chicago water bill payment?
City of Chicago is on court, has been paid. It's all payments for the current month have been paid, so they're all paid off for at least through the month of June. So you guys are not behind on any bill for City of Chicago.
Okay. So with that being said, we're going to go, I think the budget is the main issue that we want to make sure that we are discussing. We have, some have already received the budget, some may have gotten it today. So what I'll do is kind of a cursory overview of the budget, the highlight points, and then we'll leave the questions for those who've had a chance to review. For those who may just be getting it or who may not have gotten it, please, we'll be happy to send an email or have a hard copy to you. We will also have a budget hearing before the actual vote on Monday. So if there's questions that you have not had a chance to review or something that arises in between today and that time, please don't pause to bring your question to the budget meeting as well. But having said that, we're going to go into again, an overview of the budget. So if we take out, so in looking at the budget, this is also broken out similar to our financials by the different funds. So the first fund is the general fund. Pages 3 through 8 reflect all of the revenue that we anticipate collecting in the general fund. Page 8 shows a total proposed budget of $24,047,565 within the general fund. Also, general fund expenses are page 9 through 19. So if we take a look at page 19, the proposed expenses for the Village of Dolton within this budget are $23,346,515.37. So this draft of a budget right now would show that at the end of FY 2020, we will have a $701,000 surplus. So we're using that as our starting point. I know I have a few questions that I wanted to ask, and I think there may be some from the rest of the board as well as the residents. So this budget is not final until voted on, so we do have some wiggle room to make adjustments that seem reasonable, but we also want to make sure that everything we put in are attainable. With that said, I'm going to kind of see if any of the board have questions, and if not, I'm going to kind of fire away with a few of mine.
I have none so far.
I know we talked about this before the meeting. Only adjustment on my that I was privy to is the adjustment for the media center, where that's going to come down.
Yep. I will make that on the effect of when I send out the next draft of the budget. I'll make that change. There is one item I do want to make the board aware of and the residents. For the levy for the pension contributions for police and fire, the village actually levied more, so those two amounts are going to go up by equal offset. So the revenue will go up by the exact amount that the expenses will go up. So it has a zero effect from revenue and expenses. Just each line will go up by the exact amount that will be reflected to agree with the levy.
Okay. So with that, I'm going to ask about the line for the business licenses, which is on page 4. So in revenue for 2019, we showed revenue of $14,342, which I understand. I think there are some of the revenue that may have been reported into a different section.
Yep.
Because we're proposing a budget of $270,000. So if I go back 2 years, we were at $105,000. So that's still a $170,000 increase. So if you can kind of maybe get some elaboration on the thought process on that line item.
The village recently passed an increase in those fees, so that's why we estimate a little bit of an increase or a larger increase for that revenue line item. We are looking into seeing where all those other items were charged to see if there's new businesses in the village or if there's been a decrease. I reached out to permits, and once I get it here back, I can let you guys know if that number should be changed, increased, decreased, for any reason. If there's less businesses, more businesses, for a better answer, then we're looking into.
Okay. Questions, board?
No.
Okay, the next item was, let me find the page it's on. 354. And this one is more of a comment than a question. Well, I'll ask a little bit of a question about it. Page 6, this is a new revenue item. Well, an item that jumped significantly, 0100354, which is the overweight truck fines. On here, this is another way that, as in speaking with the mayor, we were looking at different ways of increasing revenue, and the mayor wanted to be adamant that we are increasing compliance with the realization that there would also be revenue coming from this. The goal, of course, being compliance. I don't want to give the impression that we're trying to ticket our way out of anything, but we do have to account for the fact that there will be some tickets, and we have to also offset the cost that we have to have for the officers. So with that, my only question on there is maybe the thought process on how the figure of 150 was arrived at.
I'd have to look into that one. I'd have to look into that one in a little bit more detail. I believe it was based off of the number of the fee and then an estimate of how many you guys expect to ticket, and that's how we got to that number.
Okay. And then one more new revenue item. Okay, now on the email I sent to you, I put the wrong category. It's 1-00, it's on page 7, 1-00-392. And we have a spot which is $147,000 for the MFT reimbursement. With that being a newer item on the budget, can you explain that one?
So one of the items the village is allowed per the Illinois Department of Transportation is you are allowed to have your public works street maintenance that they do, garbage pickup, tree cutting. You are allowed to have that reimbursed by MFT funding. Since the village is allowed to have those expenses reimbursed so long as they have the proper documentation, we have recorded in the MFT, in the motor fuel tax fund and in the general fund, an equal offset for the expense of public works charging those fees to the motor fuel tax fund, and then the revenue will be recorded by the general fund. Now, if the village does not have the documentation, then the revenue will be zero, and the expenses will be zero in the motor fuel tax fund. But that's what that is for.
Thoughts, questions from the board?
No, so far.
Okay.
The mayor's got a question.
Mayor, please.
So you're saying that the services that public works provide, either cutting trees down and/or maintenance, should be reimbursed through the motor fuel tax fund?
For specific roads and streets. I am talking tomorrow, or at least the plan is tomorrow, to talk to Robinson Engineering regarding those requirements to see if it's possible for the village to get reimbursements for those items.
Okay. So normal maintenance, say for example, whether it's cleaning the streets, cutting weeds down, trimming trees on some of our main thoroughfares or in some of the village areas, can be actually invoiced to the village and reimbursed by motor fuel tax?
Yes, so long as the proper documentation is there by the village to support saying that this public works employee worked 8 hours on this street, then you are able to get reimbursement from the motor fuel tax fund for those items.
So we should be documenting street maintenance and things like that where we can show an invoice and possibly get reimbursement?
Yes, there are specific requirements. I need to first check with Robinson Engineering what those specific documentation requirements are. But yes, you are able to get reimbursement for those public works salaries, benefits for those items.
Okay, and then that money will go into the general fund?
Yes.
Now can we, for example, I'm not sure how far we can go back or if we can go back, but if we can document what we've done so far this year, can we produce invoices to get reimbursement?
We'd have to check. Part of it is also you have to check on what the village passed for their their IDOT budget. So if they didn't pass it for their IDOT budget, then it may be a different item. This is more in the preliminary phases. I have to first check with Robinson to see, because I haven't gotten the full discussion with them yet.
Okay, as soon as we know, we'd like to know and create those invoices if we can go back, at least and I'm not sure if we can go back several years, but at least from this year, because we've done some substantial improvements towards our maintenance on our roads this year, and even today, matter of fact.
Okay, thanks, Mayor. And I think my question too, I'm going to assume that since we have it included in the draft budget, we feel more certain than not that it will be allowable.
We included it in the draft budget, so that way, if we do have the expenses and we do have the documentation required, we then will be legally allowed to expend it per our budget. So that's why I included it in the budget, so that if we do have the documentation, then we still can expend it since it will be in accordance with our budget.
Yeah, so I think my one question, if we are determined that we're unable to, we would ask if we can get just a notice, because that's going to adjust the revenue expectations by 147,000, and we may make some plans based on anticipated revenue that we discovered later we're not able to receive.
Okay.
Okay, I got 3 more, and then I'll stop dominating the microphone. On the general fund expenses, the medical insurance line item on page 9, 1-12-451, we have our medical insurance premiums went down, however, salaries are up. And I would, my guess would be that if salaries are increasing, that insurance would also be going up. Can we?
Yes, but some of the employees that are paid out of the admin department, they elect not to have health insurance, or they're part-time. So that is why they're not equally going up as the salaries went up.
Okay, so we feel this is a good picture on that number.
Yep.
All right. Additionally, I believe the same page, page 7, 1-12-531, auditing went down from $176,000 in 2019 to $45,000 in 2020.
That is the expense account that our services are paid out of, including with your audit. But since now the village is not only having us assist for the audit preparation, they're also having us be their finance director. We move those expenses to the finance department. So it's included in 0125 549.
Okay, that's the other contractual services. I think that was 150,000.
Yep, 152,000 and 0125 549 other professional services.
Okay, follow that. Questions, board? Okay, the next one, page 10, 0112 571 is our utilities. That one also took a significant decrease in the budget proposal, 327,000 down to 132,000. Can you expand on that?
So one of the items that the village did include in their Illinois Department of Insurance, the Department of Transportation budget is the electricity fees for the street lights that the village has that are on state roads. Those expenses are eligible MFT expenditures. As such, those fees are being recorded in the Motor Fuel Tax Fund, MFT, so that way we can utilize MFT resources to pay those bills instead of general resources.
Okay. Okay, I have 2 more categories. Let's see which page is this one. Page 12, 0121-432. The exempt salaries in the police department had an increase of $300,000. Can we expand on that one?
So you guys promoted 2 new sergeants to that position, and a few of the employees throughout the fiscal year will have longevity bumps, which that will in turn cause an increase in their base salary, so increasing the fees or the expenditure amount.
Okay, and similarly, right below that, well, I guess those are the same employees then, because I was looking at the medical insurance premiums also went down while salaries are going up. But I would guess if that's the same employee, we don't have additional insurance for them.
Well, some of the employees prior were being included in this department who were on long-term workers' comp. They were no longer police officers. they were being recorded out of the police department's medical line item. But since those employees are no longer part of the village, they have been moved to 0112 451.2, which is ex-employee insurance. So that line item went up for those employees.
Okay. That makes sense. Any questions, board? Okay, well, I think that's going to conclude the questions I have of Mayor.
Did you take in consideration, we're expecting about 2 to 3 officers to retire this year that have 20 years plus and are higher salaries. I think that somewhere that should be reflected in the amount that you put in for, I guess, the 300,000, whatever. But I think there may be an offset there in the fourth quarter of this year because the chief has been kind of notified of 2 to 3 retirements.
And I think also, if I'm not mistaken, 3 firemen too will retire soon.
I'm not sure I didn't hear about
Because I
that.
think, I talked to, in the fire department yesterday. So we're looking at least 3 firemen to retire also.
Yeah.
So that's
So
why we're
you
bringing
may
down a
want-
little bit more too.
Yeah, you may want to check with both chiefs, and then, but in anticipation of them retiring under the minimum staffing for the fire department, we're going to have to make some replacements, and then of course we want to. I'm not sure how many police officers you budgeted for, but we want to bring on some additional police officers.
The fire chief did notify me that he would like to bring on a few extra firefighters. I was not aware of any retirements, so we may want to adjust it to reflect those employees being retired and then add new firefighters at different ranks for that.
And then coming in at a different rate also too, right?
Yes, because they were coming in at they don't have as many years of service. They'll be coming in at a lower longevity rate, which will be at a lower rate.
And then we can make those adjustments quarterly, however we need to do it to the budget.
So then I guess in summary then what we're going to look at making those adjustments for Monday's version of the budget. Would that, am I hearing that correctly?
Well, if you're going to have to talk to the chief and maybe get a firm decision whether or not those police officers are going to retire, and or if you got any firefighters going to retire.
Okay. Okay, with that being said, I'm going to just give a couple of overriding thoughts or compliments, I would say. One to Chris Casper Group for the work that they've been doing on the budget, because as we've heard, a lot of things have been shifted to be allocated to the proper departments, which have put a lower burden on the general fund and the appropriate burden into the departments. So that's been helpful. Also, some of the things that we noted in here were ideas that the mayor was working on to make sure that we're increasing compliance and revenue, so that way we can move forward. One, of course, was with the overweight fines. Another being the sale of some of the properties so that the village would be doing. We put in some conservative amounts of revenue to show that the village can make some money off of the sale of these houses, and as the program moves forward, we can have a better gauge on that. Mayor?
And I don't have the budget in front of me, but what was the increase in the permits and licensing projection for, since we raised the?
It was raised to $270,000 for this fiscal year.
Okay.
If looking at previous year's average, it was averaging about $100,000, so
Okay.
it was about a $170,000 increase.
All right.
So,
good.
and also mentioning that increase. I will share, just for the board, Mayor, I received a call also from Trustee Henyard today, so I want to make sure that all trustees' input is received regarding the housing. She asked, because we do have the program that can bring in revenue, she asked if we could put money into the budget for the block by block. At this time, that program has not been approved. But I did say we do have $100,000 allocated to the housing programs, and the expenses would be similar. So if that program were to be approved, it would not make it a budget difference. But I wanted to make sure I noted that for resident board mention, because I was asked to bring that up.
But that's fine, but as we go forward, I don't think we should carry that as a liability or a established fund if it's not working and it's not, has been
Yeah,
passed.
and at this time, it has
So-
not been approved, so
Okay.
there's no separate fund for that.
So we want to make adjustments as we go forward to reflect our solvency or our I want to say the amount of money that we got. Right now, we're in the black.
Yes, at this moment, $710,000 of proposed surplus.
Okay.
One other item that we all want to make sure that we are cognizant of is the Melanie Fitness Center, because the general fund is showing a surplus. The Melanie is showing a deficit at this time. So we've been funding the Melanie with that. There are some aggressive programs coming to increase the Melanie Fitness Center. I know Trustee Steve has been leading that charge, so we're going to be doing, just as we're monitoring the water, we will also be monitoring the Melanie to make appropriate decisions and recommendations on that too.
Right.
But that being said, I'm going to ask the board if they have any questions either for Chris or Finance, and then we're going to open it up for public questions. Okay. Hearing none, we're going to move into citizens' address. We ask that anybody who has questions on whether it's the budget or anything that's been spoken on, please feel free to come up. We have the junior guru and the guru here. So that takes me off the hook. I'm going to turn this mic off.
Good evening, everyone. And all of my questions will really be directed to John and Chris. And of course, Trustee House, if you'd like to jump in, that would be great too. First, I want to thank that the mayor did keep the Kasperick group on that the former trustees had recommended and voted in, and that was a wise decision to keep an independent certified agency of CPAs, and I know at least 4 folks have at least worked on this budget. Number one, based upon your monthly financial reports, what is the status of the $1.6 million that we had in the bank, the proceeds from the sale of the Dorchester? I know in May we had that money, and I think this finance report was April and May. So where is that, May and June, where is the $1.6 million, which was the proceeds of the Dorchester?
The proceeds from the Dorchester, from what I remember, was originally 2.6. $2 million was received, and originally, and then a $600K receivable was, or additional was come in after the sale was finalized. The $2 million was used, I think, when it was originally received. I think a portion of it was used to make your guys' debt service payment. I'm not sure 100% on that. And then the remaining 600 was, per the agreement, set up to go straight to City of Chicago to make the original agreement under the contract for your $600,000 principal payment.
So the balance then, the balance left, whether it be $1 million, and I don't know if it's on the balance sheet, and there was an account set up for that. Do we know what the status of that money is right now as we speak?
I believe it was either all used for the City of Chicago or for your debt service obligation once upon a time.
Okay, so since May it's been used. It's used.
It was used long before May.
Okay.
I'm not 100% certain on that.
Before May, you said?
Long before, I think.
Okay. The second one, and John is here because this is from his letter, and you alluded to it earlier, Trustee House. I'll read it because most folks at home don't have this. And it's the Recreation Fund, which is the Melanie Fitness Center. The fund is the Recreation Fund. And according to the Kasperick Group, they said we or I would recommend that the village board review this fund as it continues to be a drain on the general fund. This fund reflects an operating deficit of $356,000, which it shows on the budget. The history of this fund has continually operated as a deficit. And you mentioned, Trustee House, that there are some aggressive ways that we're going to meet that debt obligation, and it's been pretty steady that we've been carrying the Dorchester, the Melanie Fitness. What are those aggressive plans in place to eliminate this $356,000 that we're being drained, according to the Conspiracy Group, yearly?
So in terms of the plans, and this is, I guess what we're doing right now is an overview. There will be aggressive membership pushes along with use of event rentals. The significance of the Melanie Fitness Center, of course it is financially, has been a burden. It continues to be a burden. It's also a place that residents get service and health. So we want to kind of have a balanced priority on this one. Honestly, I don't feel that the entire $356,000 will be eliminated within 1 year, because I don't know that 1 year of membership drives will do it. However, the plan, in addition to the membership drives, is that we do much more tracking. We lay out a plan for the community that will show month over month how we're decreasing that deficit and at what point we feel we'll have a break-even point. So that way the community can know this is the plan and can say we want to go along with that plan because we want to keep the Melanie Fitness Center, or if residents and the board feel it's too much of a drain, we can move in a different direction. But having said that, I want to maybe let Trustee Steve see if you have any thoughts on that as well.
Now, you'll be hearing at the next Public Works Committee meeting, we need to form a committee for the Melanie Fitness Center. But you will be hearing about some aggressive plans coming forward.
And this is either to John or Chris. What is your recommendation for that? And it's noted in the letter on the second page near the bottom. As a CPA and as your firm, what is your recommendation with the Recreation Center or the Melanie Fitness Center?
As I've indicated to the board in the years in the past, and the history reflects it, and it even goes back further than the history, the Melanie Fitness Center has always been a losing proposition for the village. However, it's really up to, my opinion is to the board, I want them to be aware of the financial drain, because it's the corporate fund, it's only the corporate fund then that sustains the Melanie Fitness Center. So in my comments, I was making it clear that right now, the way the budget is presented, and of course it doesn't reflect some of the changes that Trustee Steve has been contemplating. From my perspective, if you can turn it around, then it could be a viable thing to keep within the village. The second item is, and I think Trustee House alluded to, is maybe it's something that the village is willing to continue to absorb because they want that recreation facility to be available to the public. So that's really from okay, I'll use my bean counter status. I'm letting you know it's losing money, but that isn't always the driving force. Maybe one of the things to do is to try to reduce the cost. I know membership fees have gone down dramatically. That's reflected in the financial reports. Maybe the membership fees can go up, and maybe look at streamlining costs and maybe reduce that, as Trustee House had indicated. Maybe we can get that under $100,000. At least it'd be more manageable for the village if that is what the village board and mayor wish to keep going. But but again, my report is just saying, hey, I just want to make everybody aware that as it states right now, it's still going to be operating in a deficit.
I got two quick things. Number one, what is the status of the Homewood Disposal Company? What is our current debt? Are we paid on time with the Homewood Disposal? Exactly where are we at with Homewood Disposal?
So we are budgeting for the next round of bond series to be paid this fiscal year. The village has a bond payment due for Homewood Disposal.
Well, it's always been December that we paid it for the last at least 3 years. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
The village issued a 1.4 million, I think it was the dollar amount, bond this year to cover all of expenditures for this fiscal year with Homewood Disposal. Then we will pay it off in the next fiscal year until the village can get to the point of not needing to do that anymore. One of the benefits of doing this way through the bond series is it does allow the village the opportunity to utilize, not have to worry about making those payments monthly. Because those are, I believe, $120,000, $130,000 a month payments. There would be a drain on cash resources.
So again, that answers part of my question. The other part is, where are we at currently? Are we paid up to date on our regular garbage pickup with Homewood Disposal? Because I know that bill is pretty hefty per month.
Your regular monthly bills are paid through the bond, so you don't pay them until you pay the bond in December.
Okay,
So there is no current bond, there's no current Homewood Disposal invoice, because that will be paid through the bond payment.
okay. And the last one had to do with the income tax. It's page 4 at the top, state income tax, and as we all know, that's based on a per head of a population. And you see that, and it's a small number, it's not that significant, but I had a question about it. It says income tax increases 2% because I guess the state has raised the minimum wage, but that state tax is not based upon wage, is actually based upon the number, it's based on a population, if I remember. Is that correct? So you got in here 2% because of the increase in your minimum wage, so can you explain that one to me?
Well, part of, with the increase in the minimum wage, I would believe that there's going to be a lot more people working. As more people are working, your income's going to go up. Also, there's year after year you have seen an increase in your state income tax revenue. That's part of the reason why we also raised it by 2% for this fiscal year.
But it's not based upon income, it's based by technically a head count. I mean, like $99 a head, right? It's not how much you make.
What I can do for the board is, the Illinois Municipal League puts out annually what the new per capitas are going to be for motor fuel tax, state income tax, personal, I'm sorry, excuse me, I'll start again. The Illinois Municipal League puts out annually for all local municipalities what the state legislatures are appropriating for the upcoming year for motor fuel tax, the state use tax, state income tax, personal property tax. There are a number of, there might be one or two more I'm missing, where they come up with a per capita, and then you use that per capita, multiply it by the population that they have on record, and that will give you a pretty good idea of where we've come up. I know that the per capita has gone up. I should have probably relayed that to Chris versus using the 2.9. I could have just had that because I do have those numbers available. So what I will do is tomorrow I will pull them out of my Illinois Municipal Review, and in fact, if any of you get the Illinois Municipal Review, they're actually in there, in there. So that's what I use, by the way, when I look at it to give me an idea. So what I do though is, if I see it's going to go up like 2%, I don't take necessarily the number because I don't always know what population they're using. But if I see the per capita is going up 2% or 4%, then I say, okay, then our income taxes should go up 4%, or our personal property taxes.
All right, you just remind me one last one, if you permit me. It's item D on our agenda, uncollected balance of water bills. Ms. Redmond, before leaving, and I'm sure Chris is familiar with this because he's intimately involved with this, we were going to separate some of those amounts due to the village that we would probably never collect. Because when it shows an outstanding balance to the village, I know the last number I thought I heard 5 million. I don't think it's that high, is it? Well, that might be with current or 120 days later or whatever. Is there a way that, since you're here now, the Conspiracy Group, that you all can look at that, what she started? Because a lot of those are dead accounts as far as uncollected balances of water bills, where she was going to segregate some of those accounts that are active or inactive. Is that part of you all's plan?
For us to do that, I know that they're in the process of trying to send all those accounts to collections that are inactive or that are no longer feasible to collect those payments. I do remember something being said that it requires verifying all of that information before you can send it to collection. So until that full process is completed, we can't really move it to a different location, different account, because if it's moving it to an account won't have any benefit if it's still not fully going to be sent to collection. That's why we leave it where it currently is. Once all the accounts are said, okay, these are all the accounts that are no longer going to be collected, and these are the accounts that we've sent to collections, we can do a journal entry to move it to the proper location. But for the utility billing side, we really don't have the option within Locus to move those accounts out of the report.
So they'll stay there indefinite until...
Until either it's written off or until it's moved, until it's deleted, if that helps. And it's a little, without knowing the full extent of the software, it's a little hard to explain how it would get corrected.
Okay, thank you.
I just want to say one thing also, that I've seen over the past few years, the hard time when it comes to budget times, but I have to commend the finance chair, Jason House, and we've been in meetings with the mayor, myself, but it's a very nice, calm, everybody gives input, the suggestions, and we're working together on this budget. So I'd like to commend the finance chair and then the mayor for also all of us working together to make this thing right. I just want to say that.
No, thanks for the statement. I'll also include Administrator Scott for her input and hard work as she stays behind the scenes. Two more points, and then I know Trustee Denton has a question. The Homewood disposal bond that we've taken out is at a rate of 3%, which is a very manageable rate as we look at doing things. Obviously, we do not want to continue the bond process, but I think through the finance team and everybody looking out, we try to get the best deal possible for the village. We also have two bonds, the 204B and 204C, that this year will be the last year of our payments, if I've seen that correctly.
Yep.
So going into next year's budget process, we should have more wiggle room. So while we have to tighten our belts, there are brighter days ahead, I feel, for the village of Dolton. So I wanted to make sure we made those comments as well for residents to know. Please, Trustee Denton.
Good evening. Quick question. On page 6, line item 0100351, court fines. I see a big increase from actual to the proposed budget, and I see the explanation of it, but I'm not clear what you're actually telling me here. It says no explanation for change, but that's a big increase.
So part of that could be, because if you look at fiscal 18, the revenue there was 105,000.
Okay.
So that's why in fiscal 19 they budgeted 100,000. The current year actual in 19 was 47,000, and we're budgeting 100. We may have some items that are incorrectly posted to the wrong account, so that's why we kept it at 100,000, because if year after year you guys are collecting 100,000 in revenue, we would hate to say drop it down to 50,000, but because of something being misposted, that's why we left it at 100. Does that make sense?
Okay, I can see that. Okay, thank you.
With the increases from the permits and the licensing, we expect to bring in enough revenue, along with changing the strategy in regards to the use of the scales that has not been used adequately to bring in a significant increase in revenue. And that significant increase in revenue, we'd like to offset after the bond is paid for Homewood disposal, instead of us taking out a $1.4 million bond as we go forward. Maybe we can take out an $800,000 bond and pay down the bond, and as we continue to go forward and bring in additional revenue, where we'd be in a situation where we won't have to do a bond at all. So that's one use that I'd like for some of that revenue to be directed in that bond situation. And as you said, paying off those other bonds by the end of this year, I think it would put us in the right direction and a positive stability standpoint to do other things here in the village of Dolton. As far as keeping the comment in keeping the conspiracy group here, I've had a long-standing relationship with the conspiracy group. I knew them before I got in office, and since I've been in office, I know what type of quality service that they do. So that's why I initially brought John Conspiracy here and his group, and there was no doubt that we were going to keep them. Thank you.
Okay, so with that being said, yeah. You wouldn't let me hurry up and motion to close, would you? Trustee Hinyard,
Okay, hey.
and most importantly, Trustee Justice.
That's right. Did you guys hint on the housing program?
Yes, we did.
Okay, then I don't have nothing to say. As long as y'all talked
Okay.
about it, I just want to add that into the budget for the block by block. That's why I'm here today. Okay.
We discussed, so I'm sure we'll comment more at Monday.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that being stated, can I ask for a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right, Trustee Steve. Aye. Trustee Brown. Aye. Trustee House, aye. And we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, for the time.